favorite day of the week, not only because it's Friday, although I have a completely smashed day today, but we get to chat at the start of every Friday, and it really does close my week out beautifully.
As my morning sunshine. That's perfect.
Yes. And so, yeah, we said, as we just mentioned, we're going to be talking about business structure today and have a little conversation around what that means, what it looks like for people, and whether it's actually supporting what people are doing in their business or actually hindering it.
Yes, and I think it would be really good if we rewound a few months we talked about something that I think so poignant that you mentioned, which is that you don't actually have a business if you're not able to step away from that business. Sorry, I've got to reword that. It's not a company that you can then sell easily or scale if you can't step away. So I'd really like to start there if that's possible.
Yeah,
and move
definitely
there with structure.
Love that idea. And that's a really great way to start looking at how you want to structure your business. And structure is a funny term. People always think of hierarchy documents and, chains of command if you're ex-military like me, and talking about what does the structure look like. But it does start with that question about what do you want your business to be? And so I look at 3 different levels of business. So you can start a business. Essentially, a lot of hobby businesses are like this, where you're an employee of your own business. So essentially you are doing all the work. And in fact, if you're not doing the work, there's no one else to do the work for you. So you become the employee. So you may own the company or own the business, but in actual fact, you're behaving like an employee. So, clients are dependent on you, the business is dependent on you, and you can't actually step away and have time off without getting paid. So that's the first level, is essentially an employee. The next level is when we look at saying an operator. And so a business operator is someone, if you think of sort of that more management level, who isn't necessarily hands-on all the time, has the skills and experience to do so if they need to, but also has the ability to step away. So this would be someone who's operating their business. It might be an online course. It might be a combination of online courses and face-to-face or live training, where they don't have to deliver everything themselves, and they actually have other people to support or systems that support them doing that. So what that means is they're operating the business, they're moving the parts around, but they don't have to be there to deliver it in order to actually get revenue. And that's a really important part. And most of the clients who start that I work with that start their business move from hobbyists to this kind of operator model are those like you and I who are developing something from a passion. We haven't really thought about whether we want to sell the business. And in fact, we're probably not looking at selling the business because we are the business and we love doing it. But we've created a structure that allows us to step away and have other people do some of the activities, so we're not entirely dependent on everything happening through us. So that's the operator. And that's a kind of a good place for a lot of people to be. And that can be really high revenue as well. So don't think of this as revenue. This is actually just about operations. And then the third piece is when you become that owner. And as an owner, if you imagine as an owner, you don't actually necessarily deal with the day-to-day minutiae of the work. In fact, you may not even deliver any of the work anymore, but you are the brand. You're essentially that CEO position who's positioning the brand, who's building stakeholder engagement, connecting with clients at a top level. And then you have systems and processes and either teams of people or automations that actually allow the business to run. And you can actually go off and spend 6 months in the south of France or, down at in Queenstown skiing if you need to. You can do whatever you want to do and the business still runs. And that's when you're an operator level.
And what's your thoughts about where you're headed? As you said, we're both in that middle stage. Do you spend time in your planning and, future-proofing, et cetera, thinking about moving to that next stage? Or actually, do you love being in the middle there? Because I'm a bit of a control freak. So I know that I'm very comfortable in that middle spot.
It's a really great question. And I think it's an important question that we should always ask ourselves, regardless of what the outcome's going to be. And I actually sway between the two. So I'm like you, I love the delivery. Like I love being in front of clients, having these conversations. I love sharing, listening to their stories and being able to share experience to help them build their business. That's what you and I do. That's why we love our job. But what it does, it makes me think, but if I want to go and spend 3 months away and not have to worry about my business, How can I structure that? So things like membership programs, which I know we've been talking about in the past and is looking to develop, that allow a project to keep delivering in the absence of me, is definitely something that I'm looking at. Not to step away completely, but just so that as I start to, I guess, the business matures and my partner and I decide that we want to spend 3 months away and go on a holiday somewhere, the business can still run and my clients don't feel like I've left them behind, and that we structure around that. So definitely I'm moving towards parts of my business becoming that owner level.
It's interesting, isn't it?
And what about you?
Being a bit of a control freak, but also even bigger than that is just loving being hands-on. That feels so important to me, and knowing those clients. So maybe that'll change over time and evolve. But for now, definitely, particularly those one-on-one sessions. And I really enjoy the group coaching as well. So maybe I'm more interested down the track, certainly not now, but sharing the group coaching, for example, rather than stepping away from it and having someone else managing that or something, or who knows how the structure might evolve. I'm always surprised where I suddenly find myself heading. And something.
And that's a really good point, though, about collaboration and sharing, though, Kylie. I love that. Sorry, I know I interrupt you, but I just want you to talk about that sharing piece. That's such an important way of looking at it, though. So you can move from operator to owner for you, particularly because the skill and your ability to show someone how to do the work you do is so exceptional. You can train someone to be a mini Kylie so that people are getting the same experience, because that's really what we're talking about when we control things, is we want the experience to be the same for everybody. And so if you can train someone to do that work for you and just oversee that gives you freedom, but still allows you to maintain some control.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about doing it on your terms, isn't it? And the way that feels right for you. So figuring that out is probably the most important thing, and then going and implementing that.
And that's such an important point. You and I talk about this, and I think we've talked about this before in one of our previous discussions around doing things on your own terms. And it is the biggest mistake that I see most business owners make, is that they take a cookie cutter model from somebody else that's worked for them, and then they try to apply it to their business, and they get stuck with all these, aches and pains and difficulties because it doesn't quite fit to them. And they're constantly trying to re-engineer something to fit them that wasn't designed to fit them in the first place. So thinking about your business, and this is the business structure piece, is asking that question is, what do I want? What does my business want to look like? How do we want to grow? What is our short-term and long-term plans? And how can I put in place structures and processes and systems like you've done with your incredible team and your automations to enable that to grow while still allowing me to live the life and have the freedom that I want? Because that's why we started a company in the first place.
Hey, that's exactly right. To live the life that we want. It's a really, really important one. So I'd really like to touch on the subject of business name. Excuse me, because that's such a big one for people when it comes to your structure and all of that as well, because so often, right from the very beginning, you decide to start your business. It's often like a hobby style thing, and you choose a name that suits at that time. And a lot of people choose their own name. Yeah, their entire first and surname. Excuse me. And that becomes quite problematic over time. Some people think it's a great thing because they become known, as the influencer or whatever, but it makes it impossible then to sell that business going forward. What are your thoughts around that, Jenni?
It's such an important point. And it's funny when we look at some of the really big brands in the world and how they've actually done that. So if we look at, I used to work for a company called SHL Consulting. So SHL, as it's known now, is actually Saville and Holdsworthy Limited. And Saville and Holdsworthy were the two psychologists that actually started the company. And so over time, though, as they stepped out of the business, they actually went, well, how do we actually continue this brand? So they made it SHL. So the company, so there's a legacy there, but there's a whole new brand that's being created to allow the evolving of the brand. And so for me, I'm a big fan of choosing names that can be sold or that are arm's length from you. Unless you know that what you're doing, you're never going to sell it. And what you're doing is setting up a business that's fully automated and allows you to keep your name, but the company to continue, whether you're there or not. And so that's where a fully automated online kind of evergreen program kind of works. But if we have a think about some of the big companies in the world, H&M are named by its founders. BMW or Daimler Chrysler is named by its founders. So it's about actually how you position the brand name. For me, this is how I would say from a structural perspective, it's how you position that brand name in the market. Is it actually about you as the founders, or is that just part of the story? And do we position it with an arm's length model? Because selling your business, I'm not going to buy Kylie Mowbray-Allen's digital marketing business. If I wanted to buy a business, I'd have to find a way to rename it and keep the brand essence. And that's really tricky, as you would know, in that branding world.
Absolutely. So I've got an example with a friend that is a photographer and used to do the odd session for a better known photographer that, and so then somebody would book a shoot, and then then she would turn up to the shoot and they'd say, "You're not blah blah," because it was of course the person's name, and she'd say, "No, I'm not. I'm a shooter for her." And they said, "But that's not what we've paid for." And I thought that was really interesting. So I think even without this thinking of the selling of the business, even in terms of if your name is your business, and then, for example, if you're a coach and then you have other coaches coming in, that's actually not what you signed up for. You signed up for that name. So that's
100%.
One, isn't it?
It really is, actually. And I know we've got a couple of people who've commented today, said there have been a lot of people who can transition, and they have done successfully. And that is, we're not saying that you can't, but they're different when it's a product-based service than it is when it's a service delivery. And I think the distinction is if the products or the businesses that have done a really beautiful transition with an owner name into a different business are the ones that are actually delivering products or have a tangible product that sits away from the owner. So the identity of that owner isn't connected with the delivery of the product or service. Like H&M, nobody knows that H&M is the owner's names. Like, it's just because they've deliberately positioned it in that way. And I know the example that you've given is like TNT and Chanel. Again, amazing examples of businesses that are transitioned, but what they're offering is a standalone product or service that isn't connected to the individual. I think that's the difference in terms of when we're talking structure. And this is the question, isn't it? If I'm a hobbyist, if it's about me and I'm just going to do this in my part-time and I want to be that employee brand or employee business, I'm happy to call it Jenni Walke. But if I want to set it up so that I want to invite other people to join me, and when I took my name, and you and I have lots of conversations about Elephant in the Room because it is a damn long name, and I didn't think of that when I made it. But Elephant in the Room Consulting, for me, I deliberately chose that rather than Jenni Walke Consulting because I wanted the opportunity for me as I grow to invite other people to join and collaborate with me. And when it's my name, it becomes about me. But when it's a brand name that's separate from me, it actually creates an opportunity to connect and collaborate and invite other partners into the business that will help you grow. And so that's part of this conversation is, what do you want to be now? What do you want to be in a couple of years versus what do you want to be when you retire?
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that's why Hello Media was actually, I wanted it to be Hello World, but unfortunately that's a ginormous travel agent worldwide. But I thought that would be such a great one.
I know, it wouldn't have been.
But for me, Hello Media was it was quite easy to come up with that one because I too had a really long business name prior to that. So I was like, I no longer want to have a name where I've got to, spell out the email address or any of that. And it's just got to be super, super simple. And so it's interesting as you're choosing that and creating that structure right from the beginning. I had an interesting scenario years and years and years ago with my e-commerce business, is that when I first started working with this business mentor and talking about the possibility of one day selling it, etc., and he looked at me and he said, "You don't have a business to sell." I said, "Of course I do. Look at all my stockists. Look at my massive product line. Blah, blah, blah. I've really built up something amazing." He goes, "No, you haven't. You have a business name. That's all you have. You haven't become a company. So you don't even have a company to sell." And it was a really interesting one because no one had said that to me before. Yeah. And I was like, wow, where do we learn all this stuff? How do we understand the whole process and everything? And it was such a big slap in the face of, you have nothing to sell right now. Yeah. And then in fact, when I did then start the process a number of years later to get the business ready to sell, I had my accountant say to me, this is how you structure it to sell. This is what your, annual profit is. And this is then what the sale price is going to be. And I said, hang on a moment. I have an enormous social media following. I have an enormous email marketing database. I have blah, 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 all of this on top, plus all the structure set up, my warehouse, my this. That is worth so much in itself. And he went, not on paper, it's not. So that was really interesting. And so had I listened to him and believed him, I would have got a whole lot less than what I actually did. But instead I went to this broker who straight away went, he said, what do you want? And I said this, and he went, are you kidding me? Let's triple that. You'll easily get that. And I said, what's your reasoning? And he went, because you just told me you have this many social media, this many blah, 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 blah. And he goes, that's worth a lot. So it's so interesting that so-called advisors and experts, they're all coming at it with different things as well. So Jenni, I guess when it comes to structure and your business structure, who do you listen to find out the information?
It's a really, really great question. And I think the answer is lots of people, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think the reality is what you choose to value in your business and what you believe you want to grow in the business depends, I guess, on the type of people you talk to. So definitely accountants, financial advisors, and brokers are all really important people to get a sense of what the market says about your industry, your type of business. But somebody who knows your industry is really important. Because when we're looking at selling of the business, we're looking at multipliers, and there's a whole, back end conversation you can have around finance multipliers and how they actually develop and determine a value of a business. But you need someone who understands that industry, because the way that a service industry, like a coaching service like mine or yours now, is valued is quite different to something that's a product-based business, because a product-based business is looking at annuity from repeat customers, as well as that stock, as well as the engagement of suppliers, as well as that profit margin, versus for us, what we're selling is goodwill. And the value of goodwill really depends on the buyer. So in a lot of cases, it depends on what industry you're in and making sure you're talking to people who've got experience in buying and selling businesses or valuing businesses within the industry that you're playing, because it will change quite substantially. Look at the price of houses. Talk to one valuer, they'll say it's 700,000. Talk to someone else, they go, oh no, we can get you 950. So it really depends on the value they create within that space.
Absolutely. I think you're dead spot on, which is actually talk to a lot of people, do a whole lot of research. But then I was imagining you would say, come and talk to me. Because Jenni, I think people talking to you about their structure, you get so much clarity. You're so knowledgeable on all of that. It blows my mind. And I wish I'd known you 10 years ago and had been able to work with you in that last business of mine. I would have had a whole lot better understanding of where I was headed. I was very good at what I did, but I definitely needed help in terms of the structure, where I was headed, making some plans, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's where you're very good.
Oh, that's very kind. But I think it's because I look at structure in a holistic way. I don't look at it about just the ones and zeros and just the way the business is developed. Structure is so much more for that. And, structure goes down to the way that you language the business. That's part of your structure. Looking at how you engage with your customers. That's actually part of your business structure, because your business structure is essentially the foundations that allow you to build and grow your business. And if you don't have good foundations and real clarity around what those foundations look like, you end up with a rickety house, right? So you want to have understanding of, is my language consistent? And does that link to the way that I talk to my clients? Does that link to the way that I actually engage them and the processes that we take them through? Is that linked even to the way that I'm structured from a legal perspective? And you and I had this conversation with a number of my clients earlier in the year about people wanting to be a sole trader versus a company or a partnership or a trust or whatever the legal definition you want. They all have an implication on how you're able to grow and how you're able to sell it, but also the finance and risk aspect of your business. Now, I'm not an accountant or a lawyer, but there are so many advantages to things like setting yourself up as a company from a risk profile perspective, from managing an asset and tax return perspective, but also how you position yourself to the market. If I'm a company and I'm structured as a company, it tells the world that we're here to stay. A sole trader often has a fluidity around it, because it's not necessarily, there's a whole lot of other aspects around it. And I know businesses who've been sole traders for 20 years and doing incredibly well. But again, it's very hard to sell a sole trading business. It makes it much harder because the way that your tax is developed and everything else is quite different. So these are the things when you're talking business structure, is each element of the business is actually part of your overall business structure, not just your legal requirements and not just your, accountabilities or governance structures.
Absolutely. So we had our, how I run the Positive Passionate Businesswoman's meetup group. So we had our meetup this week, and our guest speaker was Karen Hillen, who is an HR specialist. Now, she was fascinating. I learned so many things in that I had not even known before, even though I have employed people in many different capacities over many years in different companies, et cetera, et cetera. And also I've worked for companies many decades ago, but because I really prefer to be my own boss, but it was just so interesting to learn new things. So she shared with rules around company structure, rules and what you need to be doing, and around sole trader and around employment things and policies, this and that. And it was really, really interesting how many things I didn't know already. And I said, where would you be learning that? And she's like, well, realistically, you're an accountant, but most accountants don't even tell you that stuff.
No.
So I definitely think there's a massive gap out there for people to be learning and understanding. It seems to me there's just not one simple, easy rule book, like company structure for dummies. That's what we need.
Well, we try to do a little bit of that with our coaching programs, and in the BOM we talk about this to try and make it as simple as possible and get some clarity. And really for me, it's about not knowing necessarily the answers, but it's about the questions you need to ask yourself. So I would flip it and say it's not about asking somebody to give you answers, but saying, okay, well, what are the things that I need to consider? What's the list of 20 questions that I should consider now and every month when I do my business review, or every 6 months or every year when I actually do a strategic plan for my business? Do you have a strategic plan for your business? That's also another question. But having those conversations, it's about the questions that you're asking, because the questions actually create other questions and flow on, and actually helps you identify gaps in that structure. So it's not the answers, it's the questions we're going to ask. And I know a number of people have been talking, so we've got the Copy Collective who said that, they missed out on an investment because their accountant looked at a ones and zeros, a revenue and profit line. And that's such an important point, is that what you're doing, what you're investing in, we have to go back to that. What am I doing it for? What do I want it to be? Am I making this investment because I'm hoping it's going to give me huge amounts of profit in the future? And so many people go into business for that reason, and they're really successful because that's their, monomaniacal focus. But for me, I wanted to start a company because I realized this is what I love doing, is sharing knowledge and creating knowledge and creating these discussions. And the best way I could do that, and the way I could do that with freedom, is to run my own business. So I couldn't do this conversation. I couldn't have these conversations working for somebody else. So so whether I make squillions of dollars or just enough to cover the bills, for me actually isn't the point of the business. Obviously, we're a company, I'm a business, I need to make a profit. I need to make money because that's my lifestyle, that's my life. And I have to support family and others around it. But it's looking at what your purpose is, and your purpose and the why you started the business will actually inform your structure. It'll inform the systems and processes you need, and it'll inform what you're going to do in the future with your business.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's magic. And I know that you've mentioned this before, and I just wanted to bring it up again because Karen Hillen mentioned it at the meetup the other night, which was, she said, if there's one really important thing you're going to do, and it comes from the book, The E-Myth, that is write your own job description. So 100%. As a business owner, actually sit down and say exactly what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and it will really change the way you look at the way you're going to grow your business.
Oh, 100%. And I would actually add a line to that, is do it when you're in love with the business.
Yeah.
So it's so often people start to think about what they're doing in business because they've had job creep, right? It's our company. So we start off doing everything. We start off doing what we do, if we did an old school hierarchy, our names would be in every job. But then the question is as you go over, and we do this in the exercises that when we run our coaching programs, you say, do a hierarchy, write down your business structure in an old school kind of CEO, finance, HR, marketing, write your name against all of them. And then tell me which is the first job you're going to get rid of when you grow to a particular size. And most people say social media, right? or they say they're finance. So they're the first two things that are generally outsourced or people find support with: a bookkeeper and accountant doing one side and somebody like you doing their social media for them. So there's opportunities to say, okay, now that I don't have those jobs, my job description changes, because it's such an important element, because you need to know where your time should be spent that's going to be the most amount of value for not only you and your clients, but for the business, right? And so as a CEO, you don't want the CEO cleaning the toilets. It's not that they can't do it, but that's not the best use of their time if their job is to expand and grow and build stakeholder relations, and build partnerships and have that strategic conversation. The time they're going to spend doing their kind of other chores isn't worth it for the business. They're better off paying someone to come and clean that. So it's looking at the value of your time. And again, these are structural questions. We don't, and an accountant and even some business advisors don't talk about these as structural questions, but they are in fact understanding how your business is run, built, and then how you can grow.
So good, Jenni. Now, how do people come and chat with you, find out more about how to shape and structure their business?
Well, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook are the two places I tend to hang out the most, at Elephant in the Room AU on either of those two places, or you can reach out and organise a one-on-one chat and we can talk about the different programs we offer, or we can just talk about your business and do a bit of a structural audit if you like. So feel free to reach out and book a call with me. And Charlie, and where do we find you? A structural audit, yes.
I love that. I think that's brilliant. Well, you can find me, join my Facebook group. That's probably the best spot to hang out with me. That's at hellomedia. Team on Facebook, and also hellomedia.team on Instagram, and also the website. So, Jenni, I hope you have a fabulous weekend.
I will.
I look forward to seeing you next Friday. What's our topic for next week going to be?
That's a very good question, Kylie. I don't think we'd actually thought about next week's topic. What should we talk about?
I think we want to talk about, I've just wrote some notes down before, goal setting.
Oh, always my favorite topic.
I know. It's the first week of spring, and it's all about fresh and relooking at, whatever. But also, it means we've only got a few months till Christmas and the end of the year.
I know. So I was at a restaurant last night and someone said it's 3 lockdowns till Christmas.
Oh.
That's what's on their board at the restaurant, and we just kind of laughed because, of course, there seems to be 4-week blocks of lockdown. And I just went, oh, gosh, I hope that's not true. But there is that kind of, that point in that jest. But I think it's a really good idea. You could say, if I'm going to steal the words off one of our friends, Julie Cliff, we're going to declutter our goals and have a look to see what's working for us and what's not.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think it's a great time to look at how's the first 9 months going and what do you need to shift up to end the year on a high, and then what's going to change for next year. Sounds
like a great plan. Let's do that.
Cool. Look forward to it. Thanks, Jenni.
Have an amazing Friday, Kylie. Chat soon.
All right, awesome. And thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.